With that, we are going to move to audience participation. So once again, we are trying something new with our Zoom meeting tonight. We are allowing people to click into our Zoom meeting as an attendee. So the rest of us are panel staff and the board are panelists. You can click in as an attendee. Our finance director, Christina Coyle, is hosting our meeting, and she is watching for anyone who is trying to sign in. And you may speak your 3 minutes public speaking. I will be asking our finance director, Coyle, for any attendees in a second. After we're done with the public speakers who are on our call, I'll be going to our village clerk to read any letters that have been sent in, and village clerk will have 3.5 minutes to read those letters. We're doing different times to accommodate the different speaking speed that people have. So that will accommodate that. So at this point, we invite anyone to speak on any item that is not on the agenda tonight. So that if there is somebody who has a letter or wishes to speak on an agenda item, you will be asked to speak when the agenda item is up. So Finance Director Coyle, do we have any attendees that wish to speak?
So I do have one attendee that has their hand raised, and I would just say to the other attendees, if you would like to speak on something that is not on the agenda, to go ahead and raise your hand, and then I will unmute you and allow you to talk. So currently we have Paul G. who has raised his hand. So Paul, I'm going to allow you to talk, and you may need to unmute yourself on your end, but you are able to talk on our end.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you for allowing our voices into the meeting. We appreciate that. We also need to show our faces. That is the other part of actually addressing our government face to face. These are inalienable rights given to all Americans. If you do not,
you do have 3 minutes, just so you know, and I will end you at the 3 minutes. And for those on the board who are not aware, Paul is the consultant from the 5G group and lives in California and has been speaking with us on 5G. So go ahead, Paul.
I would like to have the additional time given back to me that you have just taken from me. Please restore my
5 seconds.
Okay, thank you. So what we want to talk about is the need for people to face their government face to face. This is not still happening, but we certainly do appreciate voices getting across. This is really addressing a consent item that we're going to ask to be removed from the consent agenda so it can be discussed, because it's a very important item. It has to do with that water tower. Now here's the deal. We actually have been trying to get to inspect the records for that WTF and many others for, I don't know, 6, 8, 12 weeks. And we were stonewalled by Attorney Mathews. And just this week, got our hands on some of these files, and I looked at over 900 photos of what's going on. So now that we have the details, now we know what the issues are. This is an unusual event tonight that we'll talk on the agendized item. We just want to make sure that it is pulled off of the consent calendar, and we have an ability to speak about it. Separate from that, what we did talk about, and we certainly appreciated, was a call that we had with President McGinley and 2 attorneys, including Attorney Mathews and then some other gentleman, I don't recall his name at the moment, but he was the one, I guess, who was initially attached to this water tower and defeated a bunch of residents to push the antennas onto that tower. Well, look, these people don't want it, and you're going to put about some other tenants will get there in the comment. But the bottom line is that a simple needs test needs to be added to the ordinance for any antenna. That is when you can actually take a look at whether or not there's a significant gap in coverage. Once you get that kind of data in the public record that everybody can verify, then you have the opportunity to be able to fill any gaps in coverage and say no to any antennas that don't. We have read 1451 very carefully. We talked to Terrence Howard, the representative, today. We understand exactly what you can and cannot do under 1451. And a needs test will take care of everybody's needs very nicely. Cost the city nothing. Be a great thing to do. It's something we've recommended. Don't need to put it in ordinance, just need to order it up. RF engineers can do it. They can do it in an afternoon. A single spectrum analyzer sitting on the seat next to him, driving around the streets of Glen, Ellyn, will fix this problem and every other problem you have just by looking at whether or not these antennas are needed. Many of them are not. That gives you the finding to be able to say, no thank you, and it still works with 1451. You're all set. That's your answer. Thank you very much.
All right. Just for the 5G group's knowledge, residents cannot request something to be pulled off consent agenda. So a board member has to do that. But the antenna on the cottage tower is not related to 5G. Again, it is not. We're going to do. We do have some people on hold that would like to make comments regarding the consent agenda. So I'm going to ask for questions from the board, public comment, and then we'll move forward from there. So are there questions from the board?
I have questions on number 8 and number 9, and I'd like number 11 pulled from the consent agenda.
As I want to reiterate or explain what happened, Trustee Senek did pull item number 11, which is the Cottage Avenue Tower. So we will be speaking on that item next. So if your public comment is Ridge Avenue antenna, please withhold your comments until we get to that agenda item.
And I won't make any comments about the water tower, and we thank you very much for pulling that off the consent agenda. It's great that we have a chance to talk about it in regular agendized item. What I do want to report is that we've learned a lot from taking a look at the files, and it was really nice that finally we were able to look at the files. And it's something I've done across a number of cities.
Paul, I need to interrupt you for 1 second. Has this anything to do with any of our agenda items?
The agenda items.
Yes,
You
we're
don't
in the
want me
consent
to be,
agenda.
Okay, just so we're really clear. You don't want me to be talking about the water tower right now, correct?
You need to be speaking about anything that's on our agenda, our consent agenda.
Oh, your consent agenda. I will
Yes.
save everyone some time and say I'll wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else? We're going to
No,
move
there is
on to
not.
item 10 of the consent agenda item. It is ordinance 6786. No, it's not. Item 11 of the consent item, which is ordinance number 6787, which authorizes the Third Amendment to a lease agreement with New Singular Wireless for the operation of communication antenna on the Cottage Avenue water tower located at 439-447 Cottage Avenue. Trustee Senek, do you need a presentation or do you just have questions?
I just have a couple short questions, and then I'd like to listen to some of the comments, obviously. Really, the first one was, does this at all relate to the deployment of 5G?
We do have James on the line, and he is with New Singular Wireless, which is formerly AT&T. And I do want to clarify that this request is related to an amendment to a third amendment to an existing license agreement that we've had with AT&T or New Singular Wireless since 1999. So these antennas have been on the tower since 1999 pursuant to that license agreement. And what they are proposing to change this evening, or what's up on your agenda, relates only to the rent being charged for the existing antennas. Now, the agreement that we have for them and the special use permit that they have allows them to change out equipment over time, and they have done that on the tower over the last 20 years. And what they are requesting is an adjustment to the rent that they pay the village. So if there's any other questions related to that, I am happy to answer that. And this is talking about antennas atop a 120-foot tall water tower. This is not talking about the smaller wireless cellular items that are being placed closer to the ground and throughout the community. Again, we only have 3 applications in for those in the community development department, but this isn't for that.
So this does not relate to 5G deployment?
Well, I'm going to let James answer that, but I can tell you it doesn't relate to an increase or a decrease in the small cells that are being proposed. But
one other question for you,
Okay.
State, which is the agreement that you're referring to, you say began in 1999, and from what I see, it looks as though it goes up through 2024.
Well, it was originally a 5-year agreement that, and I'm not sure about the 5-year, but it has been renewed multiple times, every 5 years. And that agreement actually technically ended in 2019. But since that time passed in 2019 and neither of us canceled the agreement, now it goes through 2024. What they are proposing is to adjust the rent, but make it the change not in 2024, but make it now.
So what we're considering here is not a change to any specific term of the agreement other than the dollar amount that is paid and received.
Correct. There's a chart in the agenda item, and it shows that if we stick with the current lease terms, we're collecting. Last year we collected $53,000 per year, and if we continue with the exact same terms, it would be in 2024 $62,000 per year. So for a total, we put a 5-year total on that. So about $350,000 over a 5-year term. When New Singular Wireless first came to us with a proposal, they wanted to lower that from $350,000 to about $220,000. We negotiated a couple of different additional offers, and we've ended up at a place where staff thought we could bring this forward for your consideration at, over a 5-year period, $290,000, which would be a reduction of about $56,000 over a 5-year period. And their justification, and again, I'll let James speak to this in a minute, but their justification for wanting the reduction in rent is because when their network was originally designed, it was, really focused on voice transmission, and they put all of their antennas in high locations. And what turns out is nowadays 95% of their business, according to what they tell us, is customer data use, and those taller antennas aren't necessarily good for transmitting the data. They're better for the cellular calls, but that's only 5% of their business. And so they really don't have a great need for these, taller antennas, but the village would be collecting, $350,000 from this over 5 years. So the question is, they have mentioned they'll reduce.
2 more items after this.
They'll reduce. I'm sorry.
The amount they will pay.
I lost my train of thought.
They'll reduce the rent.
Yes, they'll. They would reduce the rent and then commit to another 5-year term rather than removing their equipment. But Christina, maybe you could unmute James L. and he could speak more directly to your question about whether this is 5G related.
James is now
welcome.
unmuted.
Welcome, James.
Hello, everyone. This is James Lefevre, and just to clarify, one of the original statements, I'm the project manager for MB7. Unfortunately, AT&T is unable to make it towards these sort of these timeframes, unless there's something that's earlier in the day. They have a national office that's based in Atlanta, Georgia, and then they also have offices that are more localized. However, they are no longer open right now. So normally, even I would be normally out of the office by now, but there was a last-minute request, to join today's meeting. So to answer the first question, no, this is not a modification that is related to 5G. She is correct that this is a rent reduction over a period of several years, and then also extending the current agreement which is set to expire in 2024 out to 2045. And how that's broken up is into 5-year optional terms, as was previously discussed. Considering that I was invited to this call today, I guess I would open it up to the floor for questions at this time, and we can go from there.
I do want to
question I had. Thank you.
I would like to mention that James is not the person we have been dealing with. Kelly Purvis has worked on this for months and months. With Pele of that organization, told him multiple times, and as recently as last week, that we needed somebody on the call, and he was out of the office. He had an out of the office message today, so we did look for somebody else to represent them tonight. It's not that we didn't give him any notice.
All right, well, thank you. Are there any other questions from the trustees? Okay, hearing none, James, hang on. We are going to hear from the public. We have a number of people that would like to speak on this. Again, I'm going to ask the Finance Director, Christina Coyle, who is hosting this meeting, to handle the online attendees, because she can see the list, I cannot. And then once we're done with the live speaking, which they each get 3 minutes per person, I will go to the village clerk. And if there's anyone that you have an email for that did not get a chance to speak, we will have you read their emails, and you have 3.5 minutes to read their emails. So, Christina, go ahead with the first person.
Hey, Diane, just a quick comment before.
Yes.
If someone speaks through Christina first, I am going to cross their name off on my list.
Correct.
Because we're not going to allow them to do that and speak here. So like I say, if I hear them, I check them. I'm going to check them off, and I will not read their what they've said for me.
Correct, and that is because it adheres to the same rules that we do when we're conducting in-person meetings, which is you have a chance to speak once for 3 minutes to the board. And I will also remind people who are calling in that this is an opportunity for the board to listen. This is not an opportunity to have an exchange of conversation with asking questions and exploring concepts. This is a time where the board listens to your comments, and we, in order to get through all the comments, we do not respond typically to each commenter. So we will listen to you for the 3 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next one until we get through all of the comments so that everybody has a chance to speak. So Christina, go ahead with your first person.
The first person I have on my list is Paul G. So Paul, I am unmuting you, and you should be unmuted now.
Okay, thank you very much for the 3 minutes. I'd like to spend that time just very calmly educating everyone on this project, because we did have a chance now to look through the files. And so what this is a water tower that's got a big bulb on the top, and I guess the very top of the water tower is about 112 feet tall. However, there is, even though they're talking just about a red decrease tonight, what you should know is that we have an active file for this water tower. They're wanting to put additional antennas down below the bulb. So instead of it being 112 feet, they'll only be about 60 to 70 feet off the ground. Very much like a small cell. And what are they planning to do? Well, you see, it's a real estate grab. Whenever they actually grab the real estate, they have total freedom to put whatever they want on there. Does that mean they're going to put both 4G and 5G on there? Well, of course it does. That's exactly what they're doing. That is entirely part of their corporate strategy. Maybe not this year, but definitely next year, anytime they want. So what they realize is they're putting more antennas, a whole extra ring below the big bulb that holds all the water. Well, what do those antennas look like? Well, right now I look at it, they have a whole range of frequencies and very powerful antennas. Let me tell you about them. Something in 600 to 800 megahertz, and then something in there about 900 megahertz, and then some stuff in there around 17 to 1800 megahertz, and all the way up to 2360 megahertz. So each of these have power levels of maximum input power between 300 and 400 watts per channel. How many channels? Maybe 12 channels. It's amazing. And then you actually do all the math out, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of watts of effective radiative power, 75 feet off the ground. This is overkill. And this is why. On October 1st of 2019, the net neutrality order went through, and there was a whole 20 pages worth reading all about preemption. Because what they had was they actually cut down the FCC's ability to preempt on things that they no longer regulate. The wireless industry right now regulates one thing: wireless phone calls. That's it. Is this much power needed for wireless phone calls? Well, no, you heard the guy say it up front. Hey, we don't do so many wireless phone calls anymore. We want all this for data. But the FCC made a statement. We don't regulate the data anymore. We're not doing that anymore. There's no regulation. Then do they have any preemption? Well, the answer is, sorry, you don't. So what can you do? You can actually do it if there is a significant gap in telecommunications coverage. Telecommunications is defined as moving data from one point to the next with no transformation. That defines a phone call. Anytime you're talking about the internet or video or gaming, that requires DNS and caching. By definition, that's an information service, and that's no longer regulated.
Paul, thank you. That was 3 minutes.
Thank
We're
you.
going to move ahead to the next person. Who's next?
So the next person I have that I'm going to allow to talk is Diana Kalfas. Diana,
Okay.
you should now be unmuted and can speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so can I ask a couple questions really quick? I don't know who's on. Is it James L from where?
Well, this is public comments. You
I can't ask.
Right.
Okay, all right. So we just found out about this minutes ago regarding the renewal lease on the Cottage Avenue Towers. We were in there on Wednesday and Friday, especially Wednesday with Attorney Mathews. And although we looked at this and we just got this information on Wednesday, as far as this upgrade they're putting in application for to do, I don't even think it's an application. I think it's just an upgrade that they're doing. We're just finding out about it now. We FOIA'd this, about a 4-month-old FOIA. So we're just reviewing these. We need more time to review. We did not see anything regarding this extension up until 2024. So this is all new to us. On pages 161 to 180 in tonight's agenda, this is all new information. And we need to have a voice and discussion on this cell tower because we're not just 5G focused. You cannot do 5G without 4G. 4G is actually the bigger problem of the two. So actually, we need time to review it and have a meeting between our group and even the trustees to inform our trustees, to educate more of our community, to allow the people around that water tower to know what's going on, especially since there's been previous issues, and discuss this in order to avert what could potentially become a tragedy based on the way things that have been going with the build-outs of 5G. In fact, I submitted the letter, which isn't going to be read now, but I would love to recommend at this point in time a wireless commission in Glen so that there's more care and consideration over the wireless build out here, ensuring that the constituents have a voice, that experts are heard, recommendations are officially recognized. And this is a perfect opportunity to take local control, measure the ambient radiation, investigating the documented effective radiated power, and where we can, as local authority, and this is a perfect point in time where we can do an official drive test and look at objective data as to what's going on there and see what is actually needed. And also to even negotiate a better deal than they're giving you. We have the ability and the knowledge and the resources to see what's really happening here and why they're trying to extend this. Although they sound like they're giving a great deal, I guarantee you they're not. And we can help our town negotiate a much better deal with this and to get the right, instead of building on top of their equipment, they want to leave it there. No, make them take their equipment off. We're here for our community and we can help with that so we can negotiate these things so we get a better deal here.
Thank you, Diana. That was 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Christina, who's next?
The next person I'm going to allow to talk is Nancy Perlman.
Okay.
So Nancy, you are unmuted and should be able to speak.
No, I don't see her unmute. There she is. Nancy, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Perlman, a resident of Glen, Ellyn. I attest and affirm that the following statements are true, accurate, and within my personal knowledge. I'm requesting you not vote on ordinance number 6787, an ordinance authorizing the third amendment to a license agreement with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC for the operation of communication antenna on the Cottage Avenue water tower located at 439 to 447 Cottage Avenue, Community Development Director Springer. The village officials and Glen Ellyn VHP, we can have a meeting of the minds and do what's right for the residents. It's in the best interest of the health and safety of the residents of Glen Ellyn to let New Singular Wireless pull their application from Glen Ellyn. We don't need their antennas and certainly don't need 5G antennas potentially added in our village. According to the agenda packet for tonight, it states New Singular Wireless is poised to remove their equipment from the Cottage Avenue water tower as it's not necessary to meet customer data demand and the cost of the lease is extremely high. This is the legal opportunity for the village to have antennas removed that deploy pulse-modulated microwave radiation on Glen Ellyn residents 24/7, 365. Here is the chance to do the right thing. I've expressed no concern or any other non-substantive matter, only matters of fact and law. I accept your oath of office. Thank you, and I really hope that you will take this into consideration, that that $55,000 a year is really not worth it for village income when you're considering the health and safety of the residents of Glen Ellyn. I hope that you will really seriously consider that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Christine, is there anyone else?
No, there is not.
Okay. Village Clerk John, are there any emails left to read?
Yes, there are.
Okay, how many do we have?
I have 5.
All right, I am setting my timer for the 3:30.
All right, the first one I have is from a J. Perlman, 124 Exmoor Avenue.
Okay.
Dear village officials, I am Dr. J. Perlman, a resident of Glen Ellyn. I attest and affirm that the following statements are true, accurate, and within my personal knowledge. Glen Ellyn officials need to hold off on voting on Ordinance 6787 tonight. The residents of Glen Ellyn have a right to speak with you, our public officials, about this ordinance. Since New Singular Wireless is willing to take their antennas off the College Avenue water tower, then let them do so. Protecting the lives of every living being in Glen Ellyn is more important than bringing in extra revenue for the village. I have expressed no concern or any other non-substantive matter, only matters of fact and law. I accept your oath of office. Signed this 22nd day, June 2020, Dr. J. Coleman.
Thank you. Next.
This is from Blake Chiato. All right, dear, I'll read it. If it's familiar, let me know. Dear Village Board, we write to encourage the Village of Glen Ellyn to respect the public process on which all Glen Ellyn residents rely to protect their inalienable rights as enumerated without limitation in the state of Illinois Constitution. The current unlawful process requires immediate correction. The Village Board President's practice of denying Glen Ellyn residents equal treatment to other presenters in these meetings is not only discriminatory, it represents unjust and unfair takings of Glen Ellyn resident voices. On the Village Board meeting on April 27, 2020, the wireless ordinance number 6779-VC was on the agenda. We were only allowed to email our public comment instead of being allowed to speak to our government face-to-face, as is our right. There is no ability for any of us to present on webcam, enhance our presentation with slides via screen sharing, or have a discussion of any points, including points of order, to address the obvious errors that are occurring during these board meetings. In these meetings, invited guests are given the opportunity to give presentations on webcam with slides and to participate in discussions with the board. At the very same hearings, Glen Ellyn residents were denied these allowances. The public comment process in the village board meetings must be corrected for the remaining duration of the Restore Illinois plan. Enabling public commenters to use their own voices, faces, and slides to persuasively communicate their critically important information. Doing so is easy for the board to do and should be instituted immediately. The residents of Glen Ellyn will no longer tolerate such discrimination being forced on them by the Glen Ellyn board or its president. Such suppression of speech is not only consistent with the practice of many other cities across the United States that have no problem in both seeing and listening to their residents at all the other end of their webcam connections. We just recently watched a Western Spring board meeting and envied as we saw their residents exercising their right to be heard by raising their hand in Zoom and speaking directly with their board. We were certainly envious. In the 2011 U.S. Supreme Court ruling, Justice Kennedy delivered the opinion of the court. Among other rights essential to freedom, the First Amendment protects the rights of the people to petition government for a redress of grievances, U.S. Constitution, Amendment 1. The right to petition allows citizens to express their ideas and solutions to their government and to their elected representatives. The right to speak fosters the exchange of ideas that is integral to deliberative democracy. Speech is speaking for itself. It is not an ill-prepared city clerk misread one words. GE has denied GE residents their rights to petition the government for a redress of grievances in a blatantly discriminatory manner, especially considering that these GE residents are very proficient in Zoom in their community, and you all share. The village requires the smiling faces and voices of peaceful residents to be replaced by another person reading it, as is a clear violation of their rights. The village must inform residents that it will seek to desist from such mistreatment of public speakers in the village board meetings.
I thank you, John. That was 3 minutes. And I would direct that resident to go, if you have issues. We are abiding by Governor Pritzker's orders. So you'd have to take up your issues with him. Okay, next person.
All right.
I'm sorry, that was 3.5 minutes. I think I said 3. It was 3.5.
All right, this is from a Julia Malkowski.
Okay.
And it says, Dear village officials, thank you for your consideration of this matter. We are requesting you take the following item off the consent agenda for tonight and not vote on it. Item number 11, ordinance number 6787, an ordinance authorizing the Third Amendment to a license agreement with New Singular Wireless, PCS, for the operation of communication antenna on the Cottage Avenue water tower located at 439-447 Cottage Avenue. As you are aware, as village residents, we have been working on educating ourselves and each other on these small cell towers. You have been gracious enough to participate in these discussions. We ask that you continue this open dialogue and remove agenda item number 11 for tonight, as this involves the matter we have been discussing and we're absolutely unsure of this agenda for tonight. We look forward to working together for the best interests of the village and ensuring that charm we have come to know and love of beloved Glen Ellyn. Best regards.
All right, thank you. And next one.
All right, this is from a Julie Malkowski.
Didn't you already say her name?
I don't have her. I don't think so.
Assistant Village Manager Bill Homer shaking his head, but I can't hear what you're saying.
All right, two village trustees, Diane McGinley, Village President Mark Franz, Village Manager Kelly Christensen, Trustee Bill Enright, Trustee Gary Fasulis, Trustee Craig Pride, Trustee Mark Sennett, Trustee Steve Thompson, Trustee John Shareskin, Village Clerk. Oh, sorry, it must be back. I'm sorry. Remove consent agenda number 11 for tonight, dear village officials. Thank you for consideration of this matter. We are requesting that you take the following item off the consent agenda for tonight and not vote on it. Ordinance number 6787, an ordinance authorizing the Third Amendment to a license agreement with New Cellular Wireless PCS for the operation of communication antenna on the Cottage Avenue water tower located at 439-447 Cottage Avenue. As you're aware, as village residents, we have been working on educating ourselves and each other on these small cell towers. You have been gracious enough to participate in these discussions. We ask that you continue this open dialogue and remove agenda item F11 for tonight, as this involves the matter we've been discussing and we are absolutely sure of this agenda for tonight. We look forward to working together in the best interest of the village and ensuring that the charm we have come to know and love in Glen Ellyn. Best regards, Glen Ellyn, VHP, Julia Malkowski.
Thank you. Next.
I should have one more. All right, this is from Janet Balsovic.
Okay.
I attest and affirm the following statements are true, accurate, and within my personal knowledge. I will first quote from tonight's agenda, Village of Glen Ellyn Board agenda. The Illinois General Assembly passed Senate Bill 2135 on May 23, 2020, which was signed by the governor on June 12, 2020. Senate Bill 2135, now Public Act 101-0640, amends the Open Meeting Act and allow the village board to participate electronically in board meetings when it's not feasible due to a disaster such as COVID-19. In lieu of participating in the public electronic meeting, the public may also complete a public comment form, which will be read into the meeting during the meeting. Read into the record during the meeting, sorry. Methods of the public are welcome to speak or submit public comment forms on any item not specifically listed on tonight's agenda for up to 3 minutes. Tonight we choose to speak instead of having our comments read by the city clerk. This is one of the options the city listed on tonight's agenda. You can easily do this by allowing our faces to be shown and our words to be heard in our own voices tonight. We will no longer tolerate the president of the board arbitrarily and capriciously affects the steal of voices. We live in the United States of America, not a totalitarian regime. We demand to address our grievances to our government face to face tonight. Fix this problem now. No more delay or excuses. We need to comment directly on consent agenda item number 11, so remove it from the consent agenda so we can speak. See Senate Bill 2135, Section 95-20, remote witnessing. Thank you, Janet Balsovic.
All right, thank you. And hopefully participants can see that we are allowing now the call-ins. We have had, this is our first night doing it. We have had a few people that struggled with calling in, but I think it has worked pretty well. And hopefully our next meeting will be in person, so we will not have to. So, all right, moving on for public comment. So a couple of things I do want to let the board know is that we are in the midst of setting up a meeting with the 5G group on Thursday, or not Thursday, sorry, July 7th or 8th with our attorneys. And our focus will be on interpreting the FCC and state legislation law as this particular group is going off of a certain interpretation of the law, which our attorneys do not agree with. And so I have set up this meeting so that we may speak through these legal issues so that as we move forward, that at least there's understanding on both sides of the interpretation and what the village will be following to keep things legal on our side. So does the board have any deliberation before I call for roll call? Or actually, we don't have a motion yet. Can I have a motion? Development Director Stacy Springer.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify for the board what's being requested this evening and how it's different from some of what the public was commenting on or requesting. So there is an actual building permit in, and it has been in. We've been talking about it for, I think, over a year with AT&T to do some maintenance and change out some of their antennas. The original approval back in 1999 was for AT&T to install around the neck of the water tower at a height of 67 feet above the ground, 9 panel antennas. Back in, hold on one second, we've updated that or allowed them to change things over the time pursuant to our existing license agreement. So back in 2012, they replaced out 4 antennas. Back in 2014, they replaced out 3 antennas. And the current request that's in for building permit is to replace out 3 antennas. So that is purely a building permit function. That permit does not require, nor would it come to the village board for any type of approval. If it meets the license agreement provisions and the special use provisions and the building code requirements, then we are obligated to issue that permit just like any other permit that would come into the department. What's being requested this evening is purely a change to the rent. Certainly, it's up to the village board to decide whether they want to allow this change to the rent, but it's not a change of $50,000, as was mentioned by one of the people that commented. It's actually a loss of about $300,000. When I said the loss was around $50,000, that was over a 5-year period between what they're currently paying and what the current proposal is for them to pay. So it's a, I guess we're getting $360,000 over the next 5 years if we keep the terms the way they are. And, if you want James to comment on whether they're going to pull their antennas off, that's fine. But a lot of the issues that were raised by the public comments are not related to the antenna replacement, which is purely building permit.
All right. Thank you for the clarification. I understand some of our commenters are raising their hands again. Again, I need to reiterate our public comment, whether it's on Zoom or in person, allows you to speak once, and then we move on with the meeting because that is a time for the board to listen to you. If you have any further comments or like to make any other suggestions, you can certainly send in emails to us as you have in the past. They will not be read in for the record tonight, but you can send in emails if you have further questions or anything. Are there any other questions by the board? Are we clear? Two trustees raised their hand to speak. I think Trustee Thompson, because you're unmuted, were you one of them?
Yes. Thank you, President McGinley. I guess I just have a question. If we, let's say we were to table and or decline the renegotiation of the agreement, that wouldn't change the fact that there's an application in by AT&T for a 5G tower or cell tower on the water tower. Is that correct? It wouldn't negate that application, would it, if we changed this agreement or didn't approve it?
No, one has no bearing on the other.
So they really are separate. They really are distinct, and they don't have anything to do necessarily with each other, is what we're
correct.
saying. Thank you.
Trustee Senek, were you unmuted and you had a question?
I didn't have any questions, but I can tell you that it would be my recommendation, and I will make the formal motion at the right time, to postpone the vote on this till the next scheduled board meeting. And I'm really sensitive to both sides. I think Attorney Mathews' points about his efforts to comply in good faith, certainly I think he's accomplished that. It's just that there has been some delay associated with the COVID experience. And so the residents who have expressed that they didn't get the material until recently, they'd like some time to review it, they'd like some time to comment. Unless someone can tell me there's going to be real sort of prejudice or detriment to the board, at the right appropriate time, I would like the floor to move to postpone it to the next scheduled board meeting.
So it is okay. I'm sorry, Christina, can you please mute Greg? I think he's yelling down the hallway. It is okay if we delay the vote on this particular contract. However, I think I need to state to the board here that in our conversations so far with this group, their intent is to delay everything. So that is their management of this issue, is to delay, and not allow anything to go through. So please just take that into consideration, that as you are working through these contracts, through these issues, through these applications, that this particular group has the intention of delaying everything until 2021, June of 2021, when that sunset clause is for legislation. So if you delay it tonight, and I totally understand if you want to, that is fine, but this group will just be you'll be allowing these deliberate delays rather than trying to uphold the contract in good faith.
I just want to say that, and I think that's a good point, and one that we all need to be very sensitive to, and hence the purpose of my motion to postpone rather than a motion to table is that it be postponed, but it be put on the agenda for the next meeting so that it is voted on at the next meeting, such that the amount of time that we would allow the residents to consider and offer further comment on would be finite. This would not be an open-ended extension, and it's not intended to kill the vote on the motion through tabling it. It's to postpone it for a specific amount of time because of the considerations that have been expressed on really both sides, but to bring this to a vote at the next meeting.
Okay, so are you formally making that motion?
If I have,
I'm raising my hand here.
Okay, Trustee Facilis.
Do we know what the market rate for a cell tower lease is?
Looking at our director.
I'm looking at Stacy.
Yes.
Stacy.
So it's all over the board, as you can imagine. There is a survey out there that was conducted, by amongst municipalities, asking what various towns were getting for their lease rates, and it's wide ranging. It's been a while since I've seen an updated one, but I could go back and look in the. We have a place where we store all those questions that are raised by various manager groups. And we can go back and see if there's something more current than 2013, which is the one that I have. And if we're going to postpone it, I can bring it to, we can deliver what we have is the most current.
Well, I think it's imperative if we are going to postpone it that we do know what the competitive rates are, because maybe we're 2,000 a month too low. Don't know.
We are on the high side, just FYI.
All right. Thank you.
Trustee Christensen, did you have something?
So I'm not sure I'm following what the real issues are here. If we allow the amendment to not proceed, is it that we A, lose the revenue, and B, we lose the ability to provide residents with cellular data? Or if the loss of this particular renter not that much of an issue for residents who are using data?
So I can attempt to answer what I would know in response to that. So if the contract goes through 2024 right now, there are certain provisions in the license agreement, I call it a contract, in the license agreement that allows, either the village or the company to get out of it. They have not initiated any proceedings to get out of the lease, to cancel it and take their equipment off. They have said that they are interested in doing that if they can't get this reduction in rent. So their full intentions, I don't know. Generally what happens when the cellular companies do this, they throw out these offers for lower rent or threats to remove equipment. And oftentimes we really don't give much heed to those. In this, one of the things I look at when evaluating these is what is the likelihood of you finding another alternate location where you could get lower rent than continuing to pay ours. Part of the issue is it's been 20 years and we escalate our rent rate at 3% over 20 years. So the original amount of $26,000 per year is now $53,000 per year. So yes, if they were to find somewhere else to relocate the antennas at a lower rate, they probably would go ahead and pull their equipment off.
And what would that mean for our residents? Would suddenly they have no cellular service, so no data?
I would imagine that they'll do it in such a way that they'll make the other, they're not going to cut service for residents, or their customers. They're going to make sure one thing is in place before they take away the other. So, but that's obviously their business and not mine. And I'm supposing things I probably shouldn't suppose.
And they're good questions. I do know that this town has had problems with cell phone reception and data in the past, and residents were extremely upset, and thus we did get requests for installing antenna in our town, which is what led to some of these. But yes, I don't know in today's day and time if they'd be able to cover our area. If they went elsewhere, I guess it would be dependent on where they went. I don't have that knowledge, but I can tell you that it was a real problem here in town when the antennas did not exist, that coverage was not here.
And have we been pursuing any other service providers who could take over that level of coverage if New Cellular Wireless decided to leave?
So I don't have the chart up, but Community Development Department staff have done a great job of cataloging where antennas are in our community and on what structures. The Cottage Avenue Water Tower, the only one up there is not AT&T. There are, there's T-Mobile. I think Sprint is up there. I'm going off the top of my head, but other providers have coverage available.
All right, thank you.
Right, other questions? All right, so
I have one. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Trustee Thompson.
Yes, I just want to make sure. So if we do delay, we're not going to lose out on the contract. Do you feel that we have some time here to wait till the next meeting, or are they anxious for a decision, or do we even know that?
Director Springer.
Thank you. I do not think this is time sensitive. Certainly they'd like to do it as soon as possible, but I doubt if we delay it 1 or 2 meetings that, they're going to move to take their equipment off. They're going to want to know what our answer is.
Okay.
President McGinley, James from the wireless.
I was just going to ask.
Has his hand raised, so I'm going to unmute him in case he...
Yes.
Thank you, James. Thank you. I was just going to ask, does James want to speak?
James, you're now unmuted.
Hello, everyone. So there obviously a lot of things have been covered, which is glad to hear that there's somewhat of an open communication between all parties here. But one thing just to mention, obviously I represent AT&T in this case, but for those of you who may not be as familiar with the telecom industry, if you do have T-Mobile and Sprint up on the same location, you should also be cognizant of the fact that they are in the midst of a merger that was just approved recently. So it is most likely, just common sense that one of those carriers will be coming down, whether they decide to go forward with Sprint's equipment or with T-Mobile's equipment. It's probably going to be based off of who has the cheaper lease rate, so that's something for you guys to be cognizant of from a budget standpoint. As far as AT&T, obviously they've been trying to have this conversation with the village for several years. They'd only recently picked up speed based off their letter of notice that was sent in December of 2019, where they were stating that, hey, we need to start looking at the financials of this agreement. Otherwise, we're going to have to start looking at alternate locations because, as was mentioned, you guys are on the higher side from a rental aspect. AT&T does have other towers within a 2.5-mile radius of this location here as well. And also, as you mentioned before, you guys do have some pending applications for small cell nodes, which will also enhance the coverage within this area here as well. So there is a lot of different network and RF engineering studies that go into this area, which obviously enhance this conversation about the lease rates. That's why they're looking at this. So that's just my 2 cents there.
And James, do you have a sense on the urgency? Our next meeting is not until July 27th, so a little over about 5 weeks. Is that acceptable, or what's your take?
The initial letter of notice that was sent out asked for a 60-day time frame, which is long since expired back in March. Obviously, this is since you guys have board meetings, and obviously COVID, everybody's been very understanding of that as well. That has caused delays. AT&T was under the impression that it was going to be decided on at this board meeting here. That's what they've been waiting for over the last month or so, was the decision. But it doesn't look like the village is ready to make that. So that's what I'll let AT&T know. And it's obviously their decision, and they'll make their best course of judgment from that.
Okay, so the board has heard from James that while he doesn't have the answer, but there is a real risk of them leaving. There's also a real risk of them staying and waiting for the 5 weeks. So there's absolutely no help in that statement other than to state it.
I'm sorry.
So it's I think the board has to weigh the the contract, the ability for coverage, and the revenue that we will be getting versus I'm not sure what we would gain from the delay, but I'm sure each of you have ideas on that. So with that said, where is Attorney Mathews still on here?
I'm here.
Okay. If the motion to postpone is wanted, do you prefer that we make the motion for the original ordinance and then amend motion for postpone, or does the motion to postpone go first?
Well, I'd like to say that I think it needs to be a motion to table to a date specific. I'm not sure there is really some open-ended motion to postpone with a date attached to it, but there's no reason that you cannot make that to start. First motion out of the box could be motion to table to the next meeting on July, I forget the date right now.
7th. It would be July 27th. Okay, so you prefer a motion to table to July 27th, and if I don't hear one of those, then the regular motion should be heard.
Okay, so first, Madam President, may I have the floor?
Sure. Yes.
I would like to move to table a vote on Ordinance 6787 to the next scheduled board meeting of July 27th, 2020.
Thank you. May I have a second? I do not hear a second, and so that motion does not pass.
I'll second it.
Oh, you will? I'm sorry. Thank you, Trustee Christensen will second it. Therefore, can we, with a table, or motion to table, we do not do deliberation. We go right to roll call. So, our village clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Senek.
Aye.
Trustee Christensen.
Aye.
Trustee Enright.
No.
Trustee Fasoulis.
No.
Trustee Pride.
No.
Trustee Thompson.
Yes.
President McGinley.
I am going to say no.
Motion did not pass.
Okay. Can I have a motion from Trustee Fasoulis, if you are so inclined, for item 11?
Madam President, I move to approve ordinance number 6787. It's an ordinance authorizing the third amendment to a lease agreement with New Cellular Wireless PCS LLC for the operation of a communication antenna on the Cottage Avenue Water Tower located at 439447 Cottage Avenue.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Enright.
Thank you, Trustee. All right. Have a roll. Any deliberation? All right. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Fasoulis.
Yes.
Trustee Enright.
Yes.
Trustee Christensen.
No.
Trustee Thompson.
No.
Trustee Senek.
Hold on, no.
Trustee Pride.
Yes.
President McGinley.
Yes. All right. So that motion passes. The reason why, just so people know, I honestly did not see the benefit of postponing it from what we've heard tonight. So that is why I voted to move it forward and pass it. So, James, thank you for hanging on so long tonight for this item. It did pass. The contract will be amended just for the rent. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Everyone have a nice evening.
You do the same. All right. So that concludes our consent agenda at 9 p.m.